Okay, so now we're going to talk about an argument against the existence of God, and this is a very popular argument. We're going to look at a bunch of different versions of the argument from evil as it tries to react to objections that might be made against it. But yeah, this is probably the main way people argue against the existence of God. It's based on evidence, so it's kind of like the design argument used evidence for the existence of God. This argument is trying to use evidence to show that there isn't a God, and the evidence has to do with evil. So, this argument, you've probably heard this argument in some form before. The idea is that um, God would not allow bad things to happen, and yet we do have bad things, so there's no God, is sort of roughly the idea. Um, so let's go ahead and look at this argument. As you're taking notes, keep track of any examples we use, definitions we use, or objections we use. Always keep track of which premise is being explained or objected to. Um, yeah. All right. So the first version of the argument from evil, the first premise says if God were to exist, then that being would be all powerful, all knowing, and all good, or all PKG for short. Number two, if an all PKG being existed, then there would be no evil. Number three, there is evil. So, conclusion, therefore, God does not exist. And so we have a definition of evil being given here. Evil equals, by definition, or means the same thing as some bad thing that is either a result of human action or a natural event. So it's just really anything bad that they're talking about. So premise one is based on a Western conception of God. So actually, some non-Western religions might not agree with this idea of God. So we should keep in mind that this is an argument against more like a Western perception of what God is. God, from that Western tradition, is thought to be perfect in every way. So God would have all of the perfections. So a perfect being would be all powerful. Perfect being would be all knowing. They would know every single thing. And a perfect being would be all good. So they would have, be good character, good intentions, like that. So all PKG. Um, and so premise two is saying that if an all PKG being existed, then there wouldn't be any evil because that being would be powerful enough to stop it, knowledgeable enough to know how to, and would want to because they're all good. So there would be no evil in the world if there were a PKG being. Even the smallest amount of evil, like stubbing your toe, would not happen because a PKG being would know how to stop that. Number three, there is evil. Again, given their definition, it's just some bad thing that's either a result of human action or a natural event. So, like a car accident that's caused by the driver is going to be evil. Stubbing your toe will be evil. If you bang your toe up against something. So, those are going to be things that are a result of human action. Natural events, just think of like natural disasters. There's a hurricane, there's a flood, tsunami, whatever it is, that's going to cause bad things. And so evil could be um, because of a human, or it could just be natural. And sometimes when people say evil, they think that it's based on bad intentions. This definition does not include intentions. It doesn't matter why something bad is happening. As long as something's bad is happening, then it's evil. So we're going to talk now about how someone might object to this argument, and I'll just kind of just to tell you how this is going to go. Um, the main way people object to this argument is to premise two, because technically premise three is hard to criticize. um, because it's just saying there's some evil. It's not saying everything's evil. It's just saying there's some evil in the world. So there's some bits of bad things. It's kind of hard to say that there's no evil at all. There's nothing bad. Um, and then oftentimes people don't object to premise one, again, because they're coming from a Western belief. They're going to go along with the idea that God's perfect in every way. Um, but that is certainly another way someone could try to object to this argument, is to explain why they don't think God would be perfect in every way. I'm going to put that aside. So the main way people object to this argument is to premise two. Premise two saying if there's an all PKG being, then there would be no evil. What people do is they try to explain why there would still be evil even if there's a PKG being. So why might an God or all PKG being allow for some evil? And so there are various different theodicies, or what they're called. A theodicy is just an attempt to explain why there's evil. All right, so let's look at the virtue theodicy. So, according to the virtue theodicy, here's a reason why a PKG being or God would allow evil. Um, God would allow evil that's necessary to strengthen our characters. So the idea here is that God wants us to be good people. So we're going to get stronger as we face bad things. So you get sick, and you have to fight through the sickness, still manage to get work done, take care of your family. That evil, the sickness, is strengthening your character. So, so the idea is that God would allow the evil that ends up helping us in terms of our characters. Um, so if we go back to premise two of the first version of the argument from evil, it's saying there would be no evil if there was a PKG being or God. And then the objection is that, well, here's a reason why there would be some evil. There's some evil to make us better people. How do we get better with evil? Well, we overcome bad things. And you've heard the expression that, like, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, or something like that. So the idea is, like, when we confront obstacles, we've got a difficult paper to write, awkward conversation to have with someone, you get injured, things don't go well on the tennis court. um, it makes you stronger. It improves you. So God would allow that stuff if it actually is needed to make your character strong. Now, the response to that is that um, if God is in fact all PKG, God could just make us strong to start with. So the benefit that I get from overcoming the sickness and still working hard and getting my job done and so on, like, I learn from that, but God could have just given me that knowledge to start with. So whatever thing you think you learn from evil, the response is that God could just give you that thing. So you learn resilience, you learn courage, you learn whatever it is. The response to this criticism of the argument from evil is that God could have just given you those things to start with so that you didn't have to confront evil in order to be a better person. Okay. Now, there's another route for someone who believes in the argument from evil, besides responding in that way to the virtue theodicy. Another route is to just reword the argument from evil in order to avoid the objection. They could sort of absorb the virtue theodicy into their argument. So I'm going to show you the second version of the argument from evil, where the first premise is the same, but number two is allowing for some evil. So if an all PKG being existed, then there would be no more evil than the minimum that is needed to strengthen our characters. And then number three is saying, well, there actually is more evil than the minimum that's needed to strengthen our characters. And so the idea is that um, when we look at how much evil there is in the world, not all of that is evil that we learn from. So, what if there is like an evil um, dictator? So, go back to like Hitler, for instance. So, Hitler's actions end up resulting in however many number of people who were killed. The number is like escaping me right now. Let's just come up with a number, say 100,000 people. That's not the right number, but just go with that for the moment. Um, did we need to have all 100,000 people killed in order for our characters to be strengthened? So, um, the idea in premise three is that we actually see more evil in the world than the minimum that is needed to strengthen our characters. We don't need to have all the people dying as they do um, in the world. Go to COVID, for instance. All the people who died around the world during COVID. Some of that death made the people who survived stronger, but some of that death, according to premise three, wasn't needed for us to be stronger. We could have. We didn't need to have every last person die during COVID in order for our characters to be strengthened. We could have had fewer people die and still learn the lessons we needed to learn. All right, so that's the second version of the argument from evil. Again, it's trying to allow for the possibility of some evil that's needed to strengthen our characters. Its point is just that we end up having more than that than we really need. All right, so here's an objection to the second version of the argument from evil. Again, it's going to be an objection to premise two. So, looking at premise two, we can see that it's trying to say that a PKG being wouldn't allow any more evil than the minimum that's needed to strengthen our characters. They try to give us yet another reason why God or a PKG being would allow evil. So, here we go with the free action theodicy. So, the free action theodicy is trying to say that God would allow evil that's a consequence of humans acting freely. So God wants humans to be free, and a consequence of us having free will is that bad things happen, evil happens. So here's their definition of acting freely: the human does the act, and the human could have done otherwise. So if we go back to Hitler, Hitler was free. He could have done otherwise, but God wanted all humans to be free. And so, consequence of giving Hitler freedom is that we have the Holocaust and we have all those people die. So, again, the idea is that um, premise two of the second version of the argument from evil isn't correct, because there's another reason why God would allow evil, and that is because people screw up. People making free choices do bad things. Somebody robs a bank because they think that's a good idea. Somebody does a drive-by shooting because they think that's a good idea. All kinds of things that are evil that um, are just because of people making bad choices when they were free. And they didn't have to make those choices, but they did. All right, so that's the free action theodicy, that God would allow evil that's a consequence of humans acting freely. Of course, there's a response to that. Let's look at the response. So the response is trying to challenge assumptions that the free action theodicy makes. So there's two assumptions that the free action theodicy seems to make, and then defenders of the argument from evil are going to challenge those assumptions. So the first assumption is that a world with all humans acting freely is better than a world without all humans acting freely. So the way I described it, according to the free action theodicy, God would want everybody to have free will. A world with everyone having free will is going to result in some evil, like the Holocaust or drive-by shooting or whatever. But the response here is saying that that's actually a mistaken assumption, that there are some people who, if they didn't act freely, the world would be better off. And so the Hitler example would actually challenge A. So A is saying a world with everybody acting freely is better than a world without everyone acting freely. The criticism is that what if God had given everybody free will except for Hitler? And now we don't have Hitler and we don't have all these people dying. So if God had prevented Hitler from having free will, we would have had fewer people dying in the world, and that world would have been better than the world we ended up having, which is with him having free will. B, the next assumption made by the free action theodicy is that a world with all humans acting freely must contain some evil. So the free action theodicy thinks that because everyone's going to have free will, they're going to inevitably make stupid mistakes. They're going to do bad things. They're going to give in to temptation. They're going to um, not be able to control their urges and like that. Now, against that assumption, a defender of the argument from evil would say that God could actually create the world so that we only had good choices. So we're making choices. We're doing things and we didn't have to. And we're deciding to do it. But all of our choices could be good. So think about somebody who goes to the ice cream store and they love all ice cream. All the choices to them are good. So now they don't have any bad choices. And God could have created the world where all our choices were good. We're still acting freely, and yet we never choose evil because evil's not one of the options. We only pick good options. All right, so just to back up a bit, we had the second version of the argument from evil. The second premise is saying if there's a God, there wouldn't be any more evil than the minimum that's needed to strengthen our characters. Free action theodicy says, well, here's another reason why we might have evil, the consequence of humans acting freely. In response to that, defender of the argument might say, well, you're assuming everybody having free will is better than not everybody having free will. And then that's thought to be a mistake by defenders of the argument from evil, because they're going to say, well, particularly bad people, if God had like not allowed them to have free will, the world would have been better off. Think of Hitler. And then the free action theodicy also seems to assume that a world with all humans acting freely has to have some evil. Defender of argument from evil says no, it wouldn't have to have evil because there could be just good choices available to people. All right. Third version of the argument from evil is trying to accommodate the free action theodicy. So they're trying to go along with that idea. It's a little longer than the others. Again, the big difference is premise 2 and 3. 2 is saying if an all PKG being existed, then there wouldn't be any more evil than the minimum that's needed to strengthen characters and as a consequence of humans acting freely. So now the third version is saying, okay, maybe you're right that we're going to have some evil because of humans acting freely. But then they say in premise 3, there's actually more evil than the minimum amount. Go back to the natural disasters. So take a natural disaster like a hurricane or a flood, and suppose that the hurricane caused 1,000 people to die. That that hurricane was not a consequence of humans acting freely. It was because of nature. And then the idea is that we didn't need to have all 1,000 people die in order to strengthen our characters. We could have learned how to deal with grief by just having 999 instead of 1,000 people die. So we didn't have to have all that evil in order to become better people. And because it was a natural disaster, it really wasn't caused by humans. So that's the third version of the argument from evil. I'm going to give you one more objection to that. And you can see that as I'm going through this, There actually are a lot of theodicies out there. If you're interested in this, you can learn about more theodicies. I suppose you could Google it at this if you wanted to see what are all the different theodicies out there. If you're interested in it, um, let's look at the last theodicy that we'll cover today. And so this is going to be an objection to premise two of the third version of the argument from evil. Again, premise two is saying with God there wouldn't be any more evil than is necessary to strengthen characters and as a consequence of humans acting freely. Necessary evil theodicy says here's another reason God would allow evil since there just can't be any good without evil. So the idea is that anytime some good thing happens, there's always some bad thing that comes with it. It's your birthday, you are having a great time, and inevitably there's a letdown the next day. So you're so excited when you had your birthday, but then it always happens that the next day you're kind of let down about it. Whatever good thing happens, there's always going to be some bad thing connected with it. You have a great time dancing somewhere, and then the next day you're sore. So there's always going to be some evil that comes with the good that happens according to the necessary evil theodicy. And so that's why they're criticizing premise two. They think that there's another reason why there would be evil besides character strengthening and because of humans acting freely. Another reason is because you just can't have anything good without evil. All right, so I've got the response here that it doesn't have to be that way, that God could set up the world so that evil doesn't have to be a part of achieving a good thing. So God could set things up so you go dancing, have a great time, and you're not sore the next day. Could set things up so that you have a great day on your birthday and you don't have a letdown the next day. That we could have been made to um, to have the good without having the evil attached to it. So the world could have been set up that way according to this response to the necessary evil theodicy. All right, well, we've covered three versions of the argument from evil. Um, Obviously, there could be more versions out there, and definitely more theodicies out there. Um, Hopefully, at this point, you're kind of getting a sense of kind of how people are arguing against God based on evil. Again, the evidence that they have is the evil, it's the bad things that are happening. And then the argument may or may not, like the first version does not accommodate for some evil being created by God. Um, so there's a lot of different ways it can go. I'm going to let you think about whether or not you agree with any of these versions of the argument from evil, or if you agree with any of the objections based on the theodicies. Okay, I'll let you think about this. Appreciate it. Bye bye.